Hello. Hello, this is gonna be fun. Okay, so this is my question. Have you ever been on one of those roller coaster dates that started out really well, but by the time you were winding down, you were convinced not only that you needed to get immense space from this person, but that they were actually like the offspring of Satan? Okay, so that makes me think that some of you are with me. Great. So then let me tell you a story from years ago about a date that Sari and Sari Lash went on. Yes, I heard that Chris told some stories about me on Monday, and someone said this is your opportunity to get him back, and so I'm taking it. Just kidding. Okay, but listen, this date had started out so well. We went on this gorgeous hike that was just hardcore enough to be Instagrammable, but not too difficult that you actually had to be in shape. We were traipsing through the forest in our Patagonias, doing white people things. I'd packed this intense picnic that was way over the top that I was sure was gonna convince him to marry me. I mean, on top of it all, at the end, we decided to go to dinner at our favorite dinner place. Okay, so we were both thoroughly into dinner. And I so sweetly, so innocently, and with no agenda whatsoever, leaned across the table and asked, "So, what do you think the timeline for our relationship is exactly?" Yes, I know what you're thinking. That sounds like a loaded question. And I can assure you that it absolutely was. Okay, so the real question behind that question was, all right, when do you plan on marrying me? Okay, and in my mind, and this is where the problems struck, in my mind, the answer to that question was, I will be proposing to you within 3 months. Okay, so imagine my horror and rage when his response was, I was thinking maybe 2 years. Yeah. Someone in this front row moaned, they felt my pain. They were like, oh, that was bad. And yes, let me tell you, everything went downhill after that. I will spare you the gory details, but I stonewalled this man so hard. At one point, and I am not exaggerating this, we were on the drive home, and we were 45 minutes from home at this point, so I had no backup plan, and I demanded that he pull over and let me out of the car. I was enraged. I was willing to take my chances with whatever random stranger was driving through, in their car next, than spend any more minutes within breathing distance of this guy. It was bad. So why was that such a problem? Because I heard when he said that I was not wanted, that I was an idiot for thinking that our relationship was farther along than it actually was. And yes, he definitely made it worse. He mishandled that conversation. And ladies, I am not saying that you shouldn't be asking for clarity in your relationship. But I admit that if this conversation didn't map out exactly how I wanted, it was not gonna go well. I had already decided how I wanted it to go. And in my heart, I looked into our future and I saw us, a married couple, in 6 months. Okay, I had connected my response, his response, to my identity, and it nearly broke us up. So clearly, all's well that ends well, and the Lord intervened, and I stand before you today as Sari Lash. Thanks, guys. I'm pretty excited about it too. Yeah. But I am here to talk to you about dating and romance, and it's clearly not because I have a particularly great dating record or Chris is particularly romantic. But here is why. Yeah. We'll get more into that later. But here is why I tell you that story. Because dating is hard. Romance is hard. Amen. And 2, we have a tendency in romance to make it all about me. I prioritize my needs, and I think about the relationship in terms of what can I take from you? And I'll be honest with you, I feel a lot of tension in this room around this topic when it comes to romance and dating, because I know that there are a lot of different perspectives and backgrounds and stories when it comes to this topic. Like, I know that there's some of you that come from a pretty strict Christian background, and when I mention dating and romance, you hear husband, wife. And there's some of you in this room that see dating as like a path to citizenship in Christian culture. Maybe there's some of you that feel really alone right now, and you're already super over the fact that Valentine's Day is next month. Maybe there's some of you that are sleeping with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and honestly, you don't really have much of a problem with that. Or maybe you're a hardened cynic and you believe romantic relationships are an oppressive construct that holds down your freedoms. The one thing that I do know is that we are all desperate for a vision of romance that doesn't suck, and a roadmap forward for how to engage this thing without getting emotionally obliterated. And the other thing I know, and I absolutely include myself in this camp, is that we tend to approach romance through the lens of consumerism. So here's what I mean by consumerism. When I say that, it's this attitude of, how do you make me feel about myself? Like, how does being with you make me look to all of my friends? How does being with you soothe my internal anxiety that maybe I'm inherently unlovable? It's like we play this, I think we play this grown-up version of Build-A-Bear, but like using Instagram and with people. So it's like, okay, I like this chick's personality, but like her body's really more like a 5 out of 10. Or like, okay, that guy is like really hot, but he doesn't really make me laugh, so pass. Or we start little love flings because we're just romantically bored. Or leading people on that we're not actually that interested in. Or fantasizing about other couples' relationships and like hate liking that couple's Instagram account. Like, who makes a couple Instagram account? But I think that Scripture provides us with a better vision for what romance is and is not. A vision for romance as an opportunity to engage someone that you're interested in as a whole person. So I'd like to cast that vision from a book of the Bible that is so scandalous that little Jewish boys were not allowed to read it. Okay, are we excited yet? Yeah. Yes. We're going to walk through 3 ways that the way of Jesus challenges our expectations and understandings about romance by looking at this 8-chapter book of Hebrew love poetry. Okay, this is a love song that makes Taylor Swift sound like a total rookie. It is largely agreed on that this book was written by Solomon, who was the king of Israel at the time. So you know the famous King David of like David and Goliath fame, of like he wrote the Psalms fame. So this is his kid. And Solomon was known for being quite the poet, a lot like his dad. And even though his own love life was a complete disaster, he writes this 8-chapter book of super romantic poetry that describes the love and pursuit between a man and a woman that are engaged. And although many scholars hone in on the nature of this book solely as an allegory, pointing to the love between Christ and his church, I think there's no escaping that this book is also just a pretty beautiful and steamy book about romance. So why the heck would God put this weird book of love poetry smack dab in the middle of the Old Testament? Because I think he wants us to understand that romance is a really good thing, and at the same time, it is not the ultimate thing. And in the process, this book breaks down 3 common romance myths that we buy into. 1, that romance is all about the feels, all about the emotions. 2, that romance is all about bodies. And 3, that romance is all about me. So the first myth we're going to tackle here is that we are emotionally married while we are just friends. So that we are emotionally married while at the same time being just friends. Or put differently, we might hold off physically, but we use people emotionally. I think this is something that happens a lot in small Christian campus culture, where we tend to hold off on the physical aspects of our relationship, no problem, but we use people emotionally. Like, I actually went to school here. Some of you know that already. I went to school here not that long ago, and I doubt that all that much has changed. So let me give you a little vignette into the life of freshman Sari. Okay, do you know that book? It's like a children's book, and maybe my education major friends will know what I mean. But it's this book, and it's called Are You My Mommy? And it is this story of this little duckling that like hobbles around and is trying to find their mom, and they like go between woodland creatures, and they're like, are you my mommy? Are you my mommy? Are you my mommy? Okay, yeah. I was that, but with boys. So I'm like going to all these like guys that I had just met, or maybe someone that was in my class for a while that I really liked, and it was like in my heart, I never said this out loud, but in my heart, I'm like, are you my husband? Are you my husband? Are you my husband? And rather than seeing these guys as brothers in Christ that are whole people with nuanced ideas and hurts and dreams and needs, all I could think was, is this man potential spouse material? And if not, I didn't really care about them. Like, I had claimed these guys in my head, and I'd already jumped forward 3 years into our future together without having any right to do that. Like, God had not promised me that relationship. I think this kind of emotional using of people can also look like using your guy and girlfriends as a cozy emotional security blanket, where you get the emotional benefits of romance without the pressure of commitment. And I'm not saying that you can't be friends with the opposite sex. That's not where I'm going here. But I think if you are really honest with yourself, you know there's a difference between being genuinely good friends with someone and keeping someone around as a backup option. Or because you're too scared to take this thing to the next level, and that zone feels easier. But I think this approach to romance hurts us. How? One way is that I think it breeds jealousy if that person that we've claimed ever talks to someone else. Like, in our hearts, we see someone, like a girl, looking at that guy and like starting to talk to him, and we're like, back off. Like, that guy's mine, even if he's not. Like, I think it also sets us up for massive disappointment if the relationship doesn't pan out the way that we hoped in our heads. And often, I think another side effect of that is it gets really awkward to try to be friends and be in communion with that person afterwards. I think it can make us get bitter towards God because we feel like he's holding out on us, when in fact, maybe he never promised you that relationship in the first place. It wastes our time often, and like we'll ditch all of our friends because we're too busy investing in this phantom relationship that we've invented in our heads. And I think Song of Songs has a better vision. Tucked away in the middle of this book of like spicy love poetry, in a place where no one would expect anyone to be adding moderation to this romance, there's a really interesting phrase that pops up on 3 separate occasions. And it's this: do not awaken love before it's time. Do not awaken love before it's time. See, the 2 main characters in this book have this gang of friends that keep popping up in the story, and their word of advice is do not awaken love before it's time. And don't hear me wrong on this, okay? I am not advocating for I Kiss Dating Goodbye Part 2. Like, we strike up the band and do purity culture all over again. This is not where this is going. Like, this does not say don't awaken love at all. It says don't awaken love before it's time. It's saying don't let your emotions get way out in front of what God seems to actually be putting in your life, IRL, like in the present. So don't emotionally and in your imagination lay claim to someone that God hasn't given you. So what do we do with that? I think here's how, with that myth busted, we can engage romance differently. One, like if you're just friends with a guy and you want your friendship to actually just stay a friendship, then just be friends. Like, don't play emotional games. Or if you're actually not friends at all, and maybe there's this dude that you've been stalking on the gram, and you've already named the children that you're gonna have together, then like stop that creepiness and talk to him instead. Like, utilize the resources that God has given you to like take that from point A to point B, but don't live in this weird halfway in between moment. I think the way of Jesus confronts our own desire to use people emotionally, and in the process, spares us a lot of heartache. All right, romance myth number 2. This is where we distance ourselves emotionally, but use people physically. So we distance ourselves emotionally and we get emotional space, all while we're using people physically. I think we receive like hot and heavy, and this is like pervading culture. I think we receive 2 simultaneous and very confusing cultural messages. One is like, why are you making such a big deal out of it? Like, if there is anything the sexual revolution has taught us, it's that sex is casual, it's relaxed, it's chill. Like, food tastes good, so we eat. Sex feels good, so we rub our bodies together. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And, yes, we went there. At the same time, we hear this cultural message that sex is essential. Like, if you're not doing it regularly, you're probably gonna die. Like, it's unhealthy. And the biggest thing that I wanna dig into on this is this. The common cultural idea that bodies are separate from mind and emotions. And this isn't new, actually. Our grandparents kicked off this cultural idea with the sexual revolution back in the 60s. So please hear me. If there's any of you in this room that are like, where is she going with this talk? Like, and to conclude, feel shame. Like, no, that's not what my intent is here. I think this culture was handed to us, and now, even though we didn't create it, we're stuck with the fallout of it. Like, you didn't create the internet. Okay, you didn't create porn culture. You didn't make your Disney stars become porn stars. But these are the cultural waters that we're swimming in. And I think we've gotten used to the temperature. Like, we've started to think that this is normal, and I believe that it's hurting us. I'm currently working towards becoming a mental health counselor, and I've sat with enough people and done enough work in this program to know that there is an unbelievable amount of sexual brokenness out in the world that we've reclassified as freedom and sexual liberation. And I think this body's first approach to romance actually really hurts us. How? Interestingly, statistics have shown that this hypersexualization leads to higher rates of depression, eating disorders, and body image issues, especially among women. Like, because on a Tinder lineup, where we're all being judged primarily and foremost for what our bodies look like, the competition is brutal. And a lot of it is edited. I think this also leads to really bad relationship decisions. Like, when you get physically involved with somebody and you start getting those dopamine and oxytocin hits, like, you literally get addicted to that person. Like, your body begins to crave them. Like, you know, has anyone ever had that roommate that like is getting ready to send her ex a text at 1 a.m. and you're like, girl, no, that guy was insane. But like, she cannot think straight because her body is literally like addicted and hooked to his. A researcher recently went to colleges around the nation, and this researcher is like, from the American Psychological Association. Like, this is not a plant, like from your pastor or from your parents that like sent her out to like manipulate the statistics. This is actual science. She found that when it comes to sexual attitudes among college students and their like consuming of other people as bodies, 41% of people said, it made me feel profoundly unhappy. And they used words like disrespected, sad, abused, and duped. 23% said that they felt ambivalent about it, and 36% said that it was fine. Like, they said that it was fine. Like, the most that people have to say about it is that it was fine. Like, that was not the promise. That's not what culture has been telling us is going on here. Like, we were told that these sexual experiences would make us feel so alive, that they would make us feel seen and known. And the best we can say about it is, yeah, 36%, that's fine. I think this speaks to how we are wired, not for casual romance removed from an emotional knowing. And I think the divorce of physical connection from a feeling of being deeply known and cared for and committed to is actually profoundly disappointing to us. Okay, Sari, so where does the Bible come in? I think the way of Jesus presents us with a better way to do relationships. So yes, let's jump back to our biblical romance novel. There is this part where this author is describing his wife. And he's talking about her body in like every single detail. Like he's going from the top to the bottom and he's like that, like that, like that. And like using very descriptive words. If you want to read it, it's all here. It's in the Bible. We like literally pass these books out. So yeah, he's like describing this in detail. And he's talking about her physical body because it's good and because it's beautiful. But this book makes it really clear that he's not just interested in her body, but also in her character and her past struggles and her whole life and her whole personhood. Like your body and your soul and your mind and your emotions are all knit together in a true romantic experience, not just bodies. And can we unsexualize our culture? No, I get it. Like I'm not being unrealistic here. In fact, I think even if you decided to stop doing life like this and you were like, you know what, I'm over it. There are people still peddling the message that college should be the height of sexual romantic experience. Like it's everywhere, yep. Like movies, TV, everyone will be supposedly having the best sexual experience ever and you're missing out on it. So it will be hard, but we can choose a better way and it'll be worth it. So what do you do with that? What are the next steps? I think you can implement some strategies for reconnecting your relationship with an understanding of that person as a whole person. I think one, this is really simple and it's kind of weird, but it's to reclaim the ordinary magic of conversation. Like, I know, that's awkward. But like actually sit down with someone face to face and like ask about their life and their emotional experience and their day to day. And it gets a lot harder to like write someone off as just a body. I think you can get your guys and your girls around you to help you be accountable to being thoughtful about the physicality of your relationships. You could consider deleting your dating apps if you know that it's making you think about people as just bodies. I think the way of Jesus encourages us to see other people in romance as whole persons worthy of care and not just physical bodies. Romance myth number 3. Romance is about what I can get out of it. Romance is all about me. So again, I'll hit you with a story. Let me tell you about early in our relationship. For me, this attitude took the form of needing Chris to be someone that he's not. Like, Chris Lash is not a naturally romantic guy. Like, he works really hard at it because he knows that I care. But this man is not of, like, the love songwriting, giant teddy bear buying personality type. That's not his bit. In fact, one of our first fights was about flowers and the giving of flowers as a tradition that we do in romance. I think we were sitting across from each other at coffee, and I think maybe my birthday was coming up, so I was dropping hints. I was like, I just think flowers are really beautiful. Like, I think they really brighten up your life. I think it's a good symbol of, like, love and affection for each other. And he just was like, so you're telling me that, like, the best symbol of love is something that you're going to throw in the trash because it's dead in 5 days? I was like, work with me here, pal. Yeah. So I needed him to be someone that he wasn't. Like, I needed to rewire him for him to fulfill my needs in exactly the way I wanted him to. I think approaching romance in a self-serving way plays itself out in a number of other ways too. I think this can also look like being interested in someone based off of how it makes you look to other people. Revenge dating is a great example of this. Like, you don't actually care anything about that person that you got involved with. You only care about like what it's doing to that other person that you like really want to make angry. And I think this approach to romance also really hurts us. Why? Because it makes people, like other human beings, expendable to us. And I think God has a better vision. So in another portion of this book, a little bit later on, this couple is reaffirming their love for each other. And you see, again, this phrase come up over and over. It's this: I am my beloved's, and he is mine. I am my beloved's, and he is mine. Like, I think we get on board with the he is mine part pretty easily. Like, done. Yep, great, you belong to me. But the I am my beloved's, that feels a little more intense. Like, wow, that might actually cost me something. I am my beloved's, and he is mine. You know what's like the least sexy thing on the planet? Sacrifice. It absolutely is. Like, I'll give you a pro tip for if you have a Tinder date that's going badly that you want to just kill dead. Like, you roll up and be like, okay, so what are the 3 ways that you plan to prioritize me over yourself? And they'll be like, bye. Like, commitment and sacrifice might not be sexy in the way that we think, but they are romantic. And in Song of Songs, we see that you can't have true romance without it. Like, true romance is incredibly sacrificial. So what does it look like to care for each other well in romance, sacrificially? I think it means taking initiative sometimes, like even though it might be scary, and by doing so, you'll risk rejection. Like, ask people out. Don't be weird about it. Or be clear, like offer clarity in a relationship that's ambiguous, even if it might cost you something. Like, don't mess with people's hearts. It might look like investing in other friendships so that you're not expecting that one person you're romantically involved with to be everything for you. It might look like not comparing your significant other in relationships, like maybe to other guys that are more romantic than Sari Lash. I'm just like, you know what? That doesn't matter as much to me anymore. And I want to offer 2 really crucial notes here. One is that everything that I've said about sacrifice in relationship is never, ever a reason for staying in an unhealthy relationship where you are being emotionally used or abused or taken advantage of. Like, some of you might actually need to break up because your relationship is really unhealthy. Like, staying in an emotionally or physically or any other kind of abusive relationship is not what I mean by sacrifice, and that is not God's vision for sacrifice either. I think the second caveat that I want to offer is for everyone who's listening to this romance and dating thing, and they're like, yeah, that'd be really nice if it happened for me. My first word to you is that the Lord sees you and truly does care about what you want. The second thing is that romance and dating are great, but they are not everything. And I cannot talk about that as much as I would like here, but the next installment of this series is completely dedicated to healthy friendships and what it looks like to do that well in life, because it's huge. It's really crucial. And I think we've over-prioritized romance because we've believed that it is the only place we will truly feel sought out and wanted and unconditionally loved. Like, the reason that we buy into those 3 myths about romance is because we are hardwired with an innate desire to know and to be known. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But we believe romantic relationships are the only way to get there. And don't miss what I'm saying here. I'm not saying that romance isn't a good gift. Any skim through this book would show you that God is pretty psyched about what he created in romance. I'm saying that romantic love is a good gift, but it makes a terrible God. Like, I'm saying that the reason why we have a tendency to walk into a room or scroll through social media and immediately start sizing people up, either as like the next potential love conquest or a spouse, is because our souls are starved for love. And I never have a tendency to take advantage of people more or over-prioritize romance than when at my core, there's something about me that feels unloved. And maybe we've forgotten, or maybe you actually never knew this and really felt this to begin with, that Jesus desperately cares for you and sees you and loves you. Like, this small book, the Song of Songs, describes the beauty of romantic love, but the entire rest of this book is God's love story to you. Like, it tells you about God's pursuit of you in Jesus, that he's crazy about you and stopped at nothing so that you could be near. And I think the way of Jesus corrects these 3 myths that we take into romance. One, that you don't have to use people emotionally anymore because Jesus is the one that cares about your emotional life and your emotional experience and satisfies your needs. 2, that Jesus is the one that cares about your sexual baggage, like not in a he's just shaking his head way, but in a way that like feels so tender and generous and gracious towards the parts of you that feel broken and need healing. And 3, that Jesus is the one who frees you up from having to take things from other people because he has given all of his very self to you. Because of Jesus' love for us, we are able to engage romance from a place of freedom. So, Judson, may we leave this place overflowing with love from the one who invented it. May that free us up to walk into the calf and walk into our class not needing people, but able to truly, truly love them because you know that you are loved. Amen. That's it. You're dismissed.